The silence in the dimly lit hotel bathroom wrapped around Olivia like an echo of her solitude. The warm water cascaded over her, attempting to ease the tension in her skin, but a growing unrest churned deep within her heart. Something was about to change. She could feel it creeping closer, both thrilling and terrifying. As she lathered soap over her legs, the emotional storm inside her intensified. Her thoughts tangled, clashing without clear direction. She was alone tonight, tucked away in this quiet suite while her husband Daniel attended a corporate retreat. The usual comfort of solitude felt different this time. An unshakable sensation settled over her, a presence she couldn't explain. Even though Adrian shouldn't have been here, she felt him close. That realization sent a shiver through her. Something was wrong. The bathroom door creaked open slowly. Olivia's breath hitched and she froze. Her mind raced, urging her to remain calm, but every muscle in her body tensed involuntarily. The sound of Adrian's footsteps echoed against the tiled floor. He stood behind her, silent, his presence shifting the very air around her. The water rushing between her legs did nothing to conceal what she was feeling. This was real. This was happening. "Olivia," Adrian murmured, his voice unsteady, yet filled with conviction. "I need to talk to you." Her heart pounded. The weight of the moment pressed down on her as her hands trembled beneath the stream. She felt his gaze on her back, yet she couldn't bring herself to turn around. Her body ached for his nearness, but her mind fought for clarity. Nothing made sense anymore. The pull between them was undeniable, an invisible force drawing them together. He took a step closer, then another. The space between them shrank until she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Her thoughts blurred into nothingness. A silent scream echoed in her mind, but no sound escaped her lips. As she finally turned to face him, their eyes met, and suddenly there was no going back. The distance, the restraint, the years of unspoken emotions collapsed in an instant. Everything blurred together, past and present, longing and longing. Olivia saw the truth reflected in Adrian's eyes. He understood. He knew. "I don't have to ask how you're feeling, do I?" he whispered. Her lips parted, but words failed her. The turmoil inside her roared like a storm on the verge of breaking. It had all come dangerously close to the edge, and she knew there was no return. Olivia was 39 years old. She had built a life on certainty, on the stability of her marriage with Daniel, a man who had buried himself in work, leaving her alone with an ever-growing emptiness. Their home, once filled with warmth, had grown cold with silence. And then there was Adrian, young, vibrant, full of life, carrying an energy that awakened something in her. When he first entered her life, she hadn't seen him as anything more than a friend of the family, a familiar face at gatherings, a fleeting presence. But slowly his glances lingered longer, his words carried more weight, and his very existence filled the void she hadn't even realized was consuming her. Now, standing before her, he was no longer just a possibility, he was a reality, a choice. The air crackled between them. Adrian's hand lifted slightly as if reaching for her, but hesitated mid-air, caught in the limbo of hesitation and inevitability. Olivia exhaled sharply, her breath mingling with the steam curling around them. Everything she had known, everything she had planned, balanced on the fragile edge of this moment. She didn't know what would happen next. She only knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The distance between us had been shrinking slowly, almost imperceptibly, until one evening when I learned that Daniel would be away on a business trip. That left me alone in the hotel suite with Adrian. That night, something in the air felt different, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. My emotions swirled inside me like a storm, an intoxicating mix of fear and excitement, fear that things could spiral beyond my control, and excitement at the undeniable pull, drawing me toward him. Adrian seemed closer than ever, his presence electric, his deep eyes whispering something I wasn't ready to name. During dinner, our conversation drifted toward something more intimate. With each passing moment, our laughter grew softer, our glances more lingering. A few glasses of wine blurred the space between us, until the attraction burning inside me threatened to erupt like a volcano. Then, suddenly, a pause settled between us. Our eyes met across the table, and my heart pounded in my chest. The warmth in his gaze sent a shiver down my spine. I took a breath, then a step closer. The space between us had all but disappeared. I could hear his breath, sense the tension in his body, feel his quiet yet undeniable pull toward me. Our eyes held each other, erasing any lingering distance. Adrian smiled softly, and when he spoke my name, there was a tremor in his voice. "Olivia," he murmured, "you look beautiful." His words sent my pulse racing. The way he looked at me drew me in, urging me to close the remaining space between us. For a moment, we stood suspended in time, locked in each other's gaze. Then, as if guided by something inevitable, Adrian took a slow, deliberate step forward. His eyes never left mine as his hands found my waist, his touch warm against my skin. A tremor spread through me at his nearness. "Adrian," I whispered, but my voice trailed off. Without another word, he placed his hands on my shoulders and drew me closer. All my thoughts faded, leaving only the raw intensity of the moment. Tilting my head slightly, I let my eyes reveal my desire. Adrian leaned in, closing the final space between us. The moment our lips met, a spark ignited within me, spreading warmth through every inch of my body. The kiss was slow, deep, filled with something I couldn't yet name. The world around us disappeared, leaving only the press of his lips against mine and the rapid beat of my heart. As the kiss deepened, Adrian's fingers wove through my hair, sending shivers cascading down my spine. He pulled back slightly, his eyes locking onto mine. "I don't have to ask how you're feeling, do I?" he murmured. A breath hitched in my throat, and the word "no" formed somewhere deep inside me. I was sinking into this moment, drowning in both fear and longing. Adrian saw it in my eyes, the hesitation, the undeniable desire warring within me. His hand slid from my shoulders down to my waist, and my body instinctively leaned into him. The weight of my loyalty to Daniel pressed heavily on me, yet the pull toward Adrian only grew stronger. "Olivia," he whispered, his lips hovering just inches from mine. "You feel it too, don't you?" My chest tightened as something inside me fractured, something I had tried so hard to hold together. Guilt clashed with an overwhelming need. My hands, moving seemingly of their own accord, pressed against his chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. Adrian's grip on my waist tightened ever so slightly, grounding me in this impossible moment. The conflict raged inside me, but I knew deep down that I had already surrendered. With an unspoken understanding passing between us, Adrian moved closer. The warmth of his body enveloped me, his scent intoxicating. He leaned down, his lips grazing my neck in the lightest of touches, sending a tremor through me. My breath shuddered as his hands traced a path down my spine, his fingers splaying at the small of my back. Every sense was heightened, every nerve alive with anticipation. "Adrian," I breathed, his name a whisper on my lips. He didn't respond with words. Instead, he pulled me closer, his hands moving over me with deliberate care, his touch igniting every nerve. I knew we were standing on the edge of something that could change everything. I knew the consequences, and yet with every second, the distance between us disappeared, until there was nothing left but us, lost in a moment neither of us could resist. The fear in my eyes, the overwhelming mix of emotions, and the intense warmth between us overshadowed everything else. The internal conflict made it harder to endure this unbearable closeness, yet I couldn't pull away. A part of me wanted to surrender, to stop thinking about the consequences. That day, I was alone in the suite, left to my thoughts, while Daniel attended his business retreat. Outside, the dark clouds hung low over the mountains and gentle rain pattered against the windows. The silence was broken only by my restless mind, circling the same emotions over and over again. A few hours earlier, while preparing dinner with Adrian, the quiet between us felt endless, stretching into something unspoken and heavy. That moment would stay with me forever. My emotions were tangled beyond recognition, leaving me lost in confusion, unsure of what I was feeling. Later that evening, I retreated to the bedroom, slipping into a simple white dress. I looked into the mirror one last time, as if searching for clarity, but all I found was uncertainty. Exhausted from trying to sort through my feelings, I let out a slow breath. As the sound of the rain blended with my solitude, something unexpected happened. The door slowly creaked open. A step, then another. "Adrian." My breath hitched as I turned sharply, eyes locking onto him. For a moment, the world froze. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice sending a shiver through me. My heart pounded, my thoughts spiraled, but still, I felt myself moving toward him. Adrian stepped closer, his eyes filled with something raw, something unspoken yet unmistakable. "I need you," he murmured, his voice laced with urgency and desire. My hands, restless and uncertain, sought something to grasp, but the only thing grounding me was him. He placed his hands on my waist, and that warmth ignited every feeling buried within me. "What do you feel, Olivia?" he asked, his voice now lower, rougher, as his gaze burned into mine. I wanted to answer, but words failed me. A silence stretched between us, heavy, charged. His fingers trailed up to my neck, sending waves of sensation through my body. We were so close now, the space between us barely existing. My breath caught in my throat, my chest rising and falling rapidly. "Is this real?" I whispered, more to myself than to him. Adrian's lips hovered inches from mine. "I don't know what this is, but I can feel you. Time seemed to slow as I let myself sink into the moment, losing myself in the gravity of him. This is just between us, he murmured, closing the final sliver of space. Just a secret between you and me. Then our lips met. The world outside faded away. The rain, the past, the consequences, none of it mattered. His touch was careful, deliberate, as if he understood exactly what I was feeling, as if he knew how fragile I was in this moment. Every gentle movement unraveled me, drawing me deeper. My hands found his chest, his shoulders, my body reacting on instinct alone. The tension between us had been building for too long, and now it was free, uncontrollable. Adrian's hands explored my back, tracing slow, intentional paths that sent tremors through me. I felt every emotion, every suppressed desire colliding all at once. The last word I had spoken vanished from my mind, lost in the storm he had created inside me. For the first time, I stopped resisting. His lips moved down my neck, his breath hot against my skin, and I shivered under his touch. A tiny part of me still feared everything slipping beyond control, but the deeper part of me, the one drowning in him, refused to let go. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, as if letting go would mean losing this moment forever. Adrian lifted his head, his eyes searching mine, as if asking for permission, as if making sure I was truly here, present with him in this. I didn't need to answer. He already knew. With a quiet sigh, I let my hands slide down to his, intertwining our fingers, grounding myself in the sensation of him. We had stepped into something unknown, something neither of us fully understood, but in that moment, it didn't matter. This was our secret. We were on this path together, so close, so intimate, so irrevocably lost in each other. Everything happened so fast. I didn't even fully understand what I was feeling or what I had done. The more I thought about that moment, that minute, the guilt inside me kept growing. Maybe talking about it will ease the burden, or maybe it'll make everything even messier, but this secret feels way too heavy to keep inside. The truth is, I'm ashamed to even talk about it, but it feels like the only way to finally let go of what's been haunting me. That evening, my mom was at the office again. Everyone knew how much she loved her job. Being Victoria Marshall meant being hardworking, responsible, and always in control. My mom worked as a procurement manager at a big company, and she often stayed late at the office. Some nights, she didn't even come home. Her passion for work had always left me feeling a little lonely, but for him, this was just normal. That evening, it was just Ryan and me at home, my mom's new husband, the perfect guy. 45, muscular, well-groomed, and a human resources manager. To others, Ryan might seem handsome, kind, and charismatic, but that night, he was so much more in my eyes. As for me, I'm Ava, 23 years old, and in my last year of architecture school. My life has always been neat and under control. Thanks to my love for sports, I've always stayed in shape. I'm the captain of the university volleyball team, which gives me a bit of a special status, both among my friends and in how I see myself. I like to take care of myself. My hair, my skin, my clothes, they've always had to be on point. I thought of myself as strong, disciplined, and organized until that night. Things weren't supposed to happen like this. That night started off like any ordinary evening, but it didn't take long to realize there was nothing ordinary about it. If you enjoy listening to stories like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and watch this video until the end. Trust me, this is a story you don't want to miss. That evening, I had prepared a nice dinner for my mom and Ryan. My mom had come home early from work, but I can honestly say she didn't lift his head from his laptop the entire time. Even when we all sat down for dinner, she kept checking notifications on her phone. That's just my mom, dedicated to his job and known for his discipline. But I couldn't ignore the distance between her and Ryan. Things had started to shift a year after they got married. Ryan is calm, mature, and romantic. I know that about her. In fact, when he and my mom first started dating, we used to talk a lot about those qualities of his. But now, it's impossible not to notice the sadness in his eyes. At dinner, everyone complimented the food. Even my mom, in between hurried bites, managed to say sweetly, "This is amazing, Ava. Thank you." But before dinner was even over, she grabbed her bag and said, "I've got some things to finish at the office. I might be back late," and left. When Ryan shut the door behind him and came back to the table, there was a tired look on his face. Quietly, I started clearing the plates while he poured himself a glass of water and stared out the window. Something felt off. Ryan usually carried such positive energy, but tonight was different. After I finished the dishes, I went into the living room. Ryan was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the dark TV screen. I sat down next to him and softly asked, "You okay?" He seemed startled for a moment, then turned his head to me with a faint smile. "I'm fine, Ava. Just a little tired, I guess." But from his eyes, I could tell he was saying the opposite of his words. The silence dragged on, stretching between us like an invisible thread. Feeling a nudge inside me, I said, "You know, Ryan, I'm not used to seeing you like this." He paused for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Some days are harder than others. Victoria's job, her passion. I get it, I really do. But sometimes, I don't know, I just feel a little lonely." His voice cracked just slightly. I never expected him to admit something like that. Ryan was always the calm, collected, and strong type, but in that moment he was so human. All I could manage to say was, "You're right." The weight of the moment shifted the atmosphere in the living room. The silence. It felt like it was both separating us and somehow pulling us closer at the same time. I wanted to help him, to make him feel better, but how? After my mom left for the office, Ryan had put on a movie in the living room. He was stretched out on the corner of the couch, lazily flipping through channels with the remote. His eyes were on the screen, but it was clear his mind was somewhere else. Without saying anything, I headed to the kitchen. I decided to make some coffee, not because I really wanted a drink, but because I didn't want him to feel alone. A few minutes later, I came back into the living room with 2 mugs of coffee. "I made one for you too," I said with a smile. He looked up, a little surprised, then smiled softly as he took the mug. Thanks, Ava. That's really thoughtful of you. I sat down on the opposite end of the couch. There were a few cushions between us, but even being that close to him felt different. On the TV, a romantic movie was playing. I had always known Ryan was a romantic guy, but it caught me off guard that he was watching something so cliché. I smiled slightly. Didn't peg you as someone who watched these kinds of movies. He shrugged. Sometimes. They're good for taking your mind off things, he said, setting his mug on the table. Besides, a little emotional moment here and there isn't so bad, right? As we got into the movie, the conversation started to flow. We commented on certain scenes, laughed occasionally, or debated the characters' choices. Ryan's calm, deep voice and the way he gave me his full attention stirred something strange inside me. The scenes in the movie somehow made the quiet moments between us feel even heavier. At one point, I felt his gaze on me. At first, he didn't say anything, but I noticed him trying to look away. That's when I realized I had unconsciously crossed my legs, causing my short black shorts to ride up a bit. My tank top, thanks to the way I was sitting, clung tighter than usual. As I tried to adjust myself subtly, I couldn't help but wonder if his quick glances meant something or if I was just imagining it. In that moment, even though he didn't say a word, the faint look in his eyes, both excited and unsettled me. Combined with the romantic scenes playing on the screen, the air in the room grew thick. I tried to seem calm on the outside, but inside, I was a mess. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I think I'm getting a bit tired. I'll head upstairs and get some rest, I said, abruptly standing up. Ryan tilted his head slightly and said, "Of course, Ava. Good night." But there was something hidden in his voice. As soon as I got to my room, I shut the door and took a deep breath. My heart pounded in my chest. What I had just felt, the subtle tension between us, scared me. I couldn't fully define it, but I knew I needed to escape those feelings. I lay down on my bed and closed my eyes, but his gaze wouldn't leave my mind. Even after retreating to my room, Ryan's presence lingered in my thoughts. The scenes from the movie, the strange tension between us, they kept replaying over and over in my head. Ryan. The more I thought about how perfect of a man he was, the deeper my guilt grew. When he married my mom, everyone knew he was romantic and loyal. He was the kind of man who brought stability, discipline, and a sense of safety into someone's life. For a man as hardworking and busy as my mom, Ryan was like hitting the jackpot. But at the same time, I couldn't help but notice how physically attractive he was. Ryan's broad shoulders, his charismatic gaze, and that calm smile that appeared when he talked. It was hard not to feel something, even for someone like me. Those glances I noticed during the movie, the way something shifted between us. I was almost certain he noticed me too. The more these thoughts invaded my mind, the more I felt both guilty and strangely excited. I was mad at myself. I shouldn't feel this way. It wasn't right. But the quickened beat of my heart and the fluttering sensations rising within me silenced any logical thoughts. For a long time, I hadn't realized how much of an impact Ryan's presence had on me. Now, it was all too clear. That night, I eventually fell asleep amidst these confusing thoughts. Even in my dreams, his face was there. When I woke up the next morning, the shame I felt was overwhelming, but getting rid of these thoughts seemed impossible. As days went by, things between Ryan and me began to change. On nights when my mom was at work, we often ended up alone together.